Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Make sure you like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please rate this podcast 5 stars where applicable and leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
And welcome back, everybody. We're on episode 26. Kristen's going to be joining us a little bit later. We're a little short on people today. Bill is off on vacation, and Mike is doing his state convention, so he won't be able to join us tonight. But Kristen will be joining us later. And right now we've got Josh on. So Josh, how was your week?
My week was pretty good. Found out towards the end of the week that they have the Rural Academy Facilitator position up for bid again. So I am trying to get my application filled out for that. I actually have a supervisor that is willing to give me the reference that is required for it, to apply. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but not holding my breath.
Nice.
I've got this whole week and then part of the following week, and then it'll be then I'll be off for a week and a half for my state convention, which is Father's Day week. So that'll be fun to be out of the office and away for a little bit, but we can talk about that more next week.
Yeah. How'd the disputes go in your office? They get them all out?
Well, from what the 204B was saying, who doesn't usually talk to me, other than a class action dispute that I put in, and my ADR asked me to add a secondary zip code for that class action, which is where the postmaster's office is, which would encompass the whole office of Charlotte, for which information we found out at the last minute that should have been inclusive but was not. There was one other person that may have filed a dispute that was off due to illness or something, or I'm not sure if it was illness or vacation during the time of the mean mail survey, but I don't know anything about what their disputes specifically were. Which is kind of disheartening a little bit. Out of, I think, 18 routes, those were the only disputes. Because I know a bunch of people did go down, so.
And I think a lot of people decided not to dispute just because they're sick of dealing with it and didn't want to have to put in the effort to deal with it. Unfortunately for my office, my postmaster made everybody dispute it. And so this whole week.
And you know what? It should have been, I think with 4,400 routes in the state of North Carolina, in the North Carolina district, I think my ADR said that they were anticipating over 4,000 disputes.
Yeah.
Granted, I know each individual item needed to be its own dispute, so I don't know how many of those translate to per route. But like I said, I know I put this one in as, like I said, as a class action to cover all the other carriers. I'm sure there were errors, but I personally, I was a 48K beforehand. I came back as a higher 48K. I just didn't want to give them more ammunition to cut more off of me when it actually happened, when they actually do cuts. So
Yeah,
But
I get.
next time in October, I will be using a fine tooth comb to go through that paperwork and find what doesn't add up.
Yeah, it was very short notice for this and very short dispute process. And I think even now we still don't have enough information to properly dispute this stuff. But my week was pretty good. I mean, mail volume was actually heavy for the first half of the week and then very light for the last half of the week. Packages, Amazon was extremely light, yeah, Friday for me, which was surprising. We didn't get much Amazon. But everybody in my office got called into the postmaster's office to fill out dispute forms at the beginning of the week to get everybody, and every single route was disputed in my office. So we're part of that
Well,
group that's actually disputing it all. So,
but
including
that is a,
my route didn't change, and I still disputed it.
yeah, well, you know what? I'm sure, if the numbers don't add up, the numbers don't add up. You know what I'm saying? And that was
Yeah,
the point of the dispute process is if your numbers weren't adding up based off of what information you were able to obtain, and it's a shame. I saw in one of the Facebook groups in the last week or so that they wanted to dispute things, but they said, how can I dispute if management's telling me they can't give me 52 weeks worth of data from the reports? How can I dispute what is good or bad?
yeah,
Um, I would say, unfortunately, it doesn't help you for now, but what you can do is have your management print those reports out for you daily going forward and keep copies of them.
exactly. And then
And that
we have
way,
to
at
do all
the
the legwork.
end, unfortunately, we do, but with the old count system, you kind of had to do the same yourself. But, that was only a 2 to 4 week period versus a 52-week period now.
Yeah. So,
So, but if you
yep,
start if you go on the computer with any spreadsheet type program, you can kind of, as you go, just fill it in and then it'll just add, if you know what the code, the codes are, you can put in the codes to add the next line, just keep adding. So you can get that
yep,
cumulative total at the end rather than having to go through a year's worth of data all at once.
yeah, exactly. So, anyway, continuing on this week, we're going to talk about relief carriers, ARCs, RCAs, and PTFs. And we have a special guest with us. He is an RCA. He has to remain anonymous, so we're going to call him Clyde. Say hello, Clyde, and tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world and how your week was.
Hello, peoples. Big fan of the podcast. I appreciate you guys doing this. I haven't listened to every episode, but most. Um, and then I heard that Bill wasn't going to be here this week, and I thought I'd show people what grumpy really was, and told Kristen I was available. Um, my week was good. I work in a single route office in Washington, foothills of the Cascades, for anybody that's familiar. Real predictable lifestyle, low hectic. Uh, it's not hectic at all. In fact, a lot would call it boring. So it's been good. I'm working only 5 days a week.
Wow. Lucky you. One route office, so who covers the route when you're not there?
Postmaster.
Oof. Need to get another RCA in there to cover when you're not there. Need to
Yeah.
up them numbers, boy.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I'm on his ass about the scans for sure. And we've been trying to hire for about a year, maybe flirting with a year and a half. And any responses we get, it's either their driving records or their inability to find the email in the junk mail folder to move forward. So not a real popular job to
That
apply for these days.
That, and in this day and age, people are not looking for that job for 1 day a week anymore.
Yeah. And on top of that, if they can't find it in their junk mail folder, how can we trust them to use a scanner?
Right. It is a bit of an idiot filter in a way. Yes.
Yeah. So Kristen's going to be joining us later. So we're going to start out with questions RCAs would have when being at the post office, starting out and getting acquainted with what they're doing. So, Josh, if you have a question, go ahead and start this off.
Uh, let's see. Well, let me start with Clyde. How long have you been with the post office?
3 years.
3 years? Okay, so you're kind of seasoned at this point. Have you always been in this one route office, or?
Yes, and I always will be until it disappears, in which case I'll move on to greener pastures. My commute is currently 4.5 miles and 9 minutes, and I'm liking it. I live on my route, so I don't think. I mean, if they make it interesting and I make regular and start getting retirement benefits, I might stick around past. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this whole SD&C thing if I've got the correct letters in there.
Moving you to the plant?
What's that?
Yeah, I think as we were talking about is the consolidation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
are they moving you to a plant?
No, we've received no word, at least through the management side. I've just been following it on, oh, I forget.
How close are you to the plant?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have seen the articles. I don't know if it's SaveThePostOffice.com that puts this out or something, but they've taken all the information the USPS has put out publicly regarding these consolidations, and they built an interactive map, and the proposed locations, and then they throw down, what is it, a 20-minute drive time for a radius.
I
And
think it's 25 miles. 25 miles
I
is what I
I
thought it
heard
was.
30. Well, last I heard, which was a year ago, they were talking about any office within a 30-mile radius of wherever these consolidated um, places were going to be.
yeah, so we sit right on the outside of whatever that original mileage was. I mean, they've been talking about this for way over a year anyway, in terms of implementing, like, what was the first one in Georgia, somewhere on the East Coast
Yeah,
anyway.
somewhere in Atlanta or near Atlanta.
Yeah. So no, we're our tiny little setup is right outside. They actually tried to close it um 20 something years ago, or no, it was more, because I think Clinton was in office at the time, and the local community raised hell, and they kept it. So they don't know anything about this consolidation plan, though. I'm waiting for concrete information before I accidentally leak it to the locals.
Yeah, you accidentally, under the covers, sneak it out there. Hey, your post office is closing.
Yeah, I want to stay here as much as they want to keep it here, so we'll see.
Well, and the funny thing is a lot of these offices are consolidating the routes, but they're still going to be running the offices because of the storefront retail.
Yeah.
So the local community can still go there, and the box sections can still go there and get their PO box mail. They can still go there and buy their stamps or money orders or send their send their packages off. That'll
I can
still
tell
be.
you, I can tell you
They
that's
can
not
still
going to
do
stick
that.
around. That's not going to stick around, though. I have a case point here. There was an office near me that the carriers were in, and they moved them to an annex about 10 miles away from the office, and they were working the front counter out of that office, and then that office had something happen to it, and so they closed the office, and then they just tore the office down.
Yeah,
And,
DeJoy
and,
Well,
probably.
well,
and
I
that's
I, I
what they would do.
know they've Here they've done some consolidation in the past, shifting zones from one building to another, and the one that they shifted was they were in a basically the retail was a storefront in a strip mall. So I don't know once they're, I heard rumors that once the lease was up, they were not going to renew it. But the last I heard, they were still in that building, and that was years ago. But I know, like the carriers, this is the second or third building. Some of these carriers, the two, well, three zones that are in my office now. Two of the one I'm in came from one office because of overcrowding, and the other two came from the same facility. One came to my office, the other went to a different office. That other office well, I should say station, got overcrowded, so they moved that zone back to our building. And now it's a matter of we are the airport location, and literally the two runways run literally one in front, one in back of our building. The airport has already told us they want their land back. We were supposed to be out like a year, probably sometime last year, but then they allowed us to extend our our lease for at least one more year because they've got a project going on, and I guess they told us we can stay until that project's complete. So even if they don't do the consolidation in my area, my office, the 50 routes or so that are in my office are probably going to go to the plant because I doubt they're looking for another building, especially if this consolidation project is going to start spreading around eventually. But I heard that Charlotte has been removed from that list completely of consolidations. So, but again, we'll see what happens come the next couple of years.
One question that a lot of RCAs get, a lot of RCAs ask is, I was told I'm only guaranteed 1 day a week. Can I do anything to boost the amount of days that I work, the amount of money I can make at the post office? Now, you're guaranteed 1 day a week at your office, supposedly, unless you're on a J route now. That was a K route, that's now a J route, then you're 1 day every 2 weeks.
And if it's
But
an H route, you're not guaranteed any days except for their
yeah,
vacation or sick time.
exactly. But you could have the opportunity of Amazon Sunday if
Right.
your office does Amazon. But you also can call around, call other offices in the area, see if they need help. There's a lot of offices that are shorthanded now and they're desperate for help.
Yep.
And if you're not working, you can go work at these other offices. You have to get permission from the postmaster there to go work for them and work it out with your postmaster to make sure that they don't go, hey, I need you to come in and work at my office, because if you volunteer at another office and your office calls, your office takes priority. On the other hand, if your postmaster tells you you need to go to this office and do work, your postmaster can't pull you back to do your route at your office because you're already
You're already
unavailable
scheduled.
working at the other office. Yes.
Yep.
So that's how it works. If you volunteer, you could be recalled. If you're told to go, you can't be recalled. Anyone want to add on that?
I'd just like to say that I'm thankful that I don't have that problem.
Well, I think they'd be kind of screwed if they tried to do that with you.
Yeah.
So,
Now, is your office a standalone where I know or are you attached to another office?
Yeah, standalone, one zip code, 2 counties. We have 3 other offices, probably each 15 minutes drive away. But They're all so crowded on
Each with
space.
their own postmaster.
Yep.
Okay.
And the next question we have for RCAs. So we have multiple routes in our office that are down, and we're not getting instructions, so we're splitting the routes ourselves. What do we do? First off, management should be telling you how to split the routes. You should not be doing that on your own. It is management's job to manage how the routes get out. It's their job to tell you how to split the routes, who's taking what, and so on and so forth. Make management do their job. On top of that, there are scans you have to do for every route, no matter what. And if you're splitting a route, make sure you talk with the other carrier that's splitting the route with you to find out who's inputting the extra scans for that route. Because the days you guys are splitting it still count towards the total evaluation for that route. There's a handy guide that was put into the group on Facebook about splitting routes. And you should look at that and see what actually can be input for split routes. It should be input as given by the Rural Letter Carriers Association, and consult with your local union steward on that as well to try and make sure that you do it the right way to ensure you get the maximum benefit for each route in your office. Thoughts?
Yep. I agree 100% with you. I would say, however, if once management says, James, Clyde, Billy, you guys are going to be taking splitting this route, the three of you should know what you do and don't know of the route. And if they don't specifically tell you, work it out and say, all right, I'm going to take this section, you take this section, you take this section. I'm going to, I'll put it all up. You two guys split it on the street. Whatever, unless they specifically tell you, they should be telling you what. But if you guys know what your strong points are in regards to that route, if management just says you three are splitting it, if that's all they say, the three get together and say and decide what's going to be the best, easiest, quickest way to get it cased, pulled down, and delivered. But like James said, it's supposed to be management's job to schedule, and if their schedule includes splitting a route, it's who's splitting what.
Were there instructions in the original Rex guide? Let's go with the revised original Rex guide, April of 22. Were there instructions in there about how to handle the scans on route splitting? It's been a while since I read it through, and that's a topic I would have skipped because it didn't affect me.
I don't think
there was not.
In the original, last year, I don't think they put anything out because of like everything else. They didn't think about that as an issue.
Important. They didn't think of it as important.
I just saying
they probably figured that if people were splitting the route, it would be thrown out, like when you miss scans. But we even found out that even when you miss scans, everything still counts. So, okay. Now another big question that comes up is, how do I handle second trips if I drive a POV route, or if my LOV won't hold all the packages that are carried by Amazon, especially those super large ones? You're still going to get you're going to get green card time for that. Anything you do after the route, you go on PM casing in your scanner, because you're still going to be assigned to the route on your time card. And then you do your green card to match that. So whatever time you hit PM casing is the time you write on your card, your green card, to go out and deliver your second trip. Then when you get back, you clock out, write that time on your green card, and you're done for the day. You got to make
Now,
sure you do everything for the route first before you go on PM casing, and then you can do your second trip.
now, would that hold true for an RCA working a route that's evaluated at less than 40 hours a week and they don't have at the end of the second trip, let's say it's Friday and they don't have 40 hours for the week yet?
Yes, it's still the same second trip rules for RCA, even if they're on a hold down. It should still be the same. Now, I would consult your local union representative on that, but I was always told that it was green card time for RCAs or 3 minutes per mile for regular carriers. Now, it's 3 minutes per mile now. It used to be 2, but now it's 3.
Yeah, I was blown away when that came out a few weeks back. Not impressed, but just surprised.
I'm not impressed, but it's better than what it was. I wish they
Yeah.
would have doubled it. I wish it would have been 4 minutes per mile, because back when the 2 minutes per mile was put in, gas was like 60 cents a gallon. I mean, yeah, you get the EMA and all that stuff, but for me, like on my route, I have a 28-mile route. So if I go 3 minutes per mile and I go deliver a package for mine, I'm mostly getting 6 to 8 miles to go deliver it. Is it worth me to do that second trip? I'm going to spend an hour and a half delivering for 3 minutes a mile. It's not worth it in the long run, but it's worth it for the post office.
It's
and then that brings us to the other point of package delivery as a second trip. If they're scanned after you leave, it's 8127 time or green card time for RCAs for delivery of parcels that were scanned after you leave. If they were scanned before you leave, you sorted them, they're ready to go, staged, ready to go, it's second trip. But if you have to sort them, put them in order to go deliver them because they scanned them after you left, especially Amazon that comes in late, then you have to do it on an 8127 time. Get with your local union representative to ensure that you do it the right way. Can you think of a question that RCAs would have, Clyde?
Yeah, so, and this was more of I haven't seen it talked about lately, and I don't know if there was a change in the last contract regarding the 50-mile distance rule regarding RCAs being sent to other offices involuntarily. I'm sure you've at least read some discussion about actual drive distance versus 50-mile radius.
My understanding was it's 50-mile radius. So in my opinion, it says radius, which means as the crow flies.
Right. You can drive 65 miles to get to a post office 49 miles away. You can still get paid you still get compensated for all the miles you actually drive, but
you should be compensated from your office to that office on e-travel. A lot of offices try not to pay that, but you should be compensated on e-travel on that. I like to benefit my postmaster on that. And if I'm closer to the post office than the office is, I'll do it from my house to that office if I know I'm going there in the morning. But if it's further from your house than from the post office you're at, unfortunately, that's what you're going to have to do, is it's from your base office. But carrier discretion, you can always do it straight from your office to there. But however you want to do it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of intensity on that topic. Maybe Rex has overshadowed it the last year, but
Um,
The concept of radius versus actual miles and being able to say no.
well, that, and if you actually look at all of the documentation, you won't find where it says 50 miles. It says I think it's within it's not regular commute, but something there similar
Yeah, I've seen
within a reasonable commute. A reasonable commute is thought to be up to 50 miles, which is where that number comes from.
right, and that's kind of the union's definition and what their stance was on that when that came out, right? And the Reading version of the contract.
I can tell you that what was put out, at least through local meeting, our district's ratification meeting, was the intent was to be for that, yes, it's within a reasonable commute. The intent was for example, neighboring offices, local offices near you, and it turned into the up to 50 miles, which unfortunately in some areas they take advantage of that. For example, with FSS, when they first introduced the FSS years ago, they held any offices that were affected by it, and offices within a 50-mile radius were froze for converting RCAs to regular due to the possibility of excise regulars from their routes going down so much that they disappear. I got hit by that because when they first introduced it, the Greensboro district, which is the northern part of the state, had 2 machines that they set up. One street on one route in the city of Charlotte fell within that 50-mile circle. Froze all of, was a 2-year freeze. Coming up on the end of that 2 years, they realized they didn't need 2 machines in Greensboro. So they were going to disassemble the one machine, transport it down to Charlotte, and reassemble it. So they extended that 2 year to 1 more year. So it was 3 years. Then once the machine got turned on in Charlotte, it started a new 2-year freeze. So that was 5 years that I was in RC, what couldn't even convert if I wanted to.
That's ugly.
Which is why it took me 9 years to go regular.
I got one time in 3 years I've been sent to another office, and it was like I was mentioning earlier in my example, it was 49 miles away, radius. It took me an hour and a half to get there and an hour and a half to get home, and they gave me their second largest route to do. And I do have to give them credit. They cased it all and pulled it down for me. I was originally supposed to use my POV when I got there, and I had a mechanical problem. So while they were getting the mail ready, I was at the local Napa, discovering that I couldn't get fixed as quick as we'd hoped. So I ended up in an LLV that I'd never driven on an actual route before. This is actually my first 3 months. It was a 9.2 hour route, and Yeah, I was gone from home for 14 hours that day. I was super pissed. But then when my PM had texted me in the afternoon and asked me how things were going, and I told him all about it. He was very familiar with that office, and he too was pissed, which was nice, thankfully. And he said that he wouldn't do that to me again. So, and it never has happened again. But yeah, I just think, yeah, the radius thing's a problem. It doesn't take into account. Well, it's like everything around here. People throw a number at something and assume that it's a fair application to every circumstance when it clearly is not.
I'll
Right.
throw this at you. There is a post office up in the UP of Michigan that's down in that little tip of Michigan there that actually can reach across the lake into Wisconsin. And that post office on the tip of Wisconsin there is 49 miles away. It's a 2.5 hour drive to get there.
Oh, fuck that.
But it's in another district. And I think that's also the other caveat to it is it has to be in the same district.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
I hope that's the caveat at least.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'd be asking for the ferry.
I can't speak for that because yes, we are short-handed, but as a office as a whole, well, as my station and an office as a whole, we're so big. I don't want to say self-sufficient, but we'd be the one sending people elsewhere. You know what I mean? Not the other way around, having them bring people in.
How many routes?
In my station or the office?
Office.
About 250.
Whoa.
In, what's this, 23, 20, in, I'm going to say 2018, we were the second largest rural office in the country. In 19, we were the third largest. I'm not sure where we are now. If we've gone back to second or maintain, but I'll have to see if I can find that out at our
So is
state convention in 2 weeks.
that one postmaster for 250?
Yes. 250 rural routes, probably 400 city routes. In rural routes are in 9 of 15 delivery units.
Could you imagine being a postmaster overseeing 250 rural routes and Rex comes out and you got 250 sweaty, pissed off carriers coming to you, all with unique problems on their routes?
Well, his office is on the second floor of the plant. He has a receptionist. Each office has a station manager and 6 mental supervisors.
How many supervisors?
In my station, we have the station manager and 3 supervisors and a 204B.
Do any of them know what they're doing at least halfway?
One of them knows exactly what he's doing. He was a city carrier. He knows the city craft inside and out. He can go to in the one zone, which is the zone he's in charge of, which does not have any rural routes. He could walk to any station and say, all right, start here and here, and he can tell you exactly how long it'll take. He knows rural stuff, but at this point, because he is very hands-on and knows his shit and can do and has done lots, and just watches the rest of the management team just either hide in the office or sit on their ass and do nothing. He's just like, fuck it. I'm done. I will come in, do my job. I will go home. At this point, he is waiting. I think he has like 3 more years till he's old enough to start collecting TSP, and then he's out.
Nah, good for him.
Yeah.
You know,
So
because he has 20 years military behind him too. So he already has the one pension.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah. Um,
Yep.
I know we've discussed this one before. Recently, either last week or the week before, the RCA questions: how do we get paid?
you either get paid the route evaluation, green card time, or if you work 40 hours or more a week on a route, you'll get straight time and time and a half for anything over 40. If you do 39.99 hours overall, you've clocked 39.99 hours, you will earn the evaluation for all the routes you did. If you work 40 hours, you will earn 40 hours. It does not matter whether you are the fastest carrier in the office or the slowest carrier in the office. If you are getting back before evaluation time and you hit 40 hours, you get paid 40 hours.
The
Because
caveat to that is within the first 10 weeks, you get paid, which is 5 pay periods. You will get paid whichever is greater, evaluation or hourly. So if it's a
so
42-hour route and it took you 45 hours, you'll actually get paid the 45
you get paid
hours. If it's
45
the
hours.
same
If you
42-hour route and you get only work 39, you'll get paid the 42.
Yep. And if you're on a evaluated route and you work
Well,
that route
actually,
3
let
days,
me change. I
you
was
work
just going to
three
say, let
days,
me change that example to it's a 9-hour route. You only work 3 days and it takes you 39 hours instead of the 27 it should have been. You'll get the 39 hours pay
yep,
because you're hourly for those first 10 weeks.
whichever is greater of those weeks. So even those carriers that work 1 day a week, if you do a 9-hour route in 8.5, you get the 9 hours. If you do that 9-hour route in 10 hours, you get 10 hours.
Right.
And make sure you check your paycheck every week. And if you need a breakdown on that, ask somebody. Ask your local union steward. Ask your carrier next to you if they understand how the paycheck breaks down. Go to your postmaster. Ask them how the paycheck breaks down. Make sure it's right. Paychecks do have a habit of being messed up.
Big time. Hey,
They could miss inputting a route that you did one day. They could miss putting in the entire week. Always check your paychecks.
this
Yep.
reminds me
Always
of a
make a copy or take a picture of your green cards and the 4240s, which are the timesheets for the route.
this reminds me of a question I've had for 2.5 years.
Green.
Has there has there ever been a concerted effort by the carriers or the union to make our pay stubs make just a little bit more sense, especially for the newcomers?
Once you learn how they're put together, you can understand them better. The hardest part is determining because you have to follow federal guidelines when it comes to the pay, especially your FLSA. The pay is broken down into several sections. One of them is actual work hours, which is the time you actually worked. Then you have your route hours, what the route actually pays. And then if you have EMA, that's also broken down on there. And if you have holidays or you get P time for doing mapping, P time for mapping, that's added on there as a separate line item. It's just basically it's a complete breakdown of the work that you did that week.
So why don't they? I mean, think of the
Suppose
RCAs that are working multiple routes, and at the end of their week, they're dizzy, they're tired, they're dehydrated, they hate their kids, and they look at their paycheck. They don't know what they did one day from the other, and that the USPS has the information of what they did on a daily basis. Why not at least provide the information on a day by day? And you can show a weekly summary, but why is there this avoidance of showing each individual day?
well, I would say to answer your initial question, I personally am not aware of where anything is, but I know there is floating around somewhere, and you can find it on the internet somewhere, a cheat sheet of how to read the pay stub.
Oh, I've seen
Um,
that. There's a YouTube video
Yeah,
of
there's
them
a
guys.
YouTube
well,
video out
before
there.
there's a
There's
YouTube
also
video out
a
there that
breakdown.
someone did, but there is a sheet where they break down.
You're breaking up.
Sorry, I said there's a breakdown of what the different codes are and what everything means, on a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
It should, if you worked 3 different routes, it should break down on your pay stub what those 3 routes were, with what your actual hours were for that route. Was it a government vehicle or a POV? And if so, the EMA, and what the actual work hours were, what you actually will get paid for that route for that
What
day.
the evaluation was for that route that day.
So let's say you
So
work route 1, 2, Saturday and Monday, route 2 on Wednesday, had off Thursday, and then route 3 on Friday. It should break down route 1, 2 trips on route 1. What your total hours for those 2 days you worked, what the pay was for those 2 days of the actual worked hours that you're getting paid for. Route 2, 1 trip, what your actual hours were versus your worked hours that you get paid for. And route 3, 1 trip, what your actual hours were versus your paid hours. And then was it POV or EM or government vehicle? So it should be, as an RCA, it should be breaking that down. And then I can't remember what they're using for what anymore, either 998 or 999 as auxiliary time, which is your green card time.
Yeah, it's just my point is that if they would just show all your numbers by day instead of lumping it all into one week. I mean, they don't even, like on light blue, there's not even a nice, well, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never found it, a legend that helps a person understand their pay stub. Example, those two codes.
No, there isn't. You would have to get a hold of one of those cheat sheets, or like you said, look up that YouTube video that someone graciously put up.
Yeah, and that's even on an
talk
old
to your
version.
or talk to your local
You
union steward. Get to know your local union steward. They're there to help with that
they
stuff.
should be able to help you break it down. I know, at least in my area, a lot of the RCAs will either at the end of every day or week will take a picture of the time sheets and green cards, or they have a notebook and they jot down what they did from what time to what time,
Oh yeah.
so they can go and track it at the end of it. So come Friday when they get their pay stub, or Tuesday, Wednesday when they go to Lake Blue to look at their pay stub, they can say, all right, this works out, this works out, this works out. Wait, this is off. And that way they can go back and to the supervisor and say, hey, this isn't, I can't find this time here. to be able to get it corrected. I'm gonna say, but yeah, that is your best bet is to notate what somehow, whether it's like I said, taking a picture of your green card and the 40, which is the timesheet for the route, and or having a little composition, a little spiral book or something, and just notate. I know there's apps also out there that you can enter enter times in and break it down. I'm not sure of what any of those apps are because I personally didn't use them. But I know there's at least a few that people I've seen on Facebook over the last couple of years that people said, "Oh, I use this to track my time."
Yeah,
Definitely, you
it's
want
just
to keep your own paperwork. Keep track of yourself. If you need to talk with your local steward, they could probably get you an NRLCA calendar, little pocket calendar that you can use to write down your times on, or buy a pocket calendar at a local office supply store. Anything you
Right.
can just to have something to keep track of what you're doing.
The one I can tell you, the one nice thing about getting a union calendar is it'll tell you what the beginning of each pay period and which pay period it is and what the pay days are. So you can kind of keep track that way. Um, but can't guarantee or promise that they'll be able to get you that. But if you are, if you have a rep that's nice enough to be able to get you one and can get you one, it'd be a great resource because you can see when the pay periods start and end.
yeah, I'm a big fan of photographing the 4240 or the green card. I hear so many stories on Facebook groups about allegedly people's supervisors or postmasters putting in lunch breaks for them and stuff like that. And it's just nice to have a record of the original document that you signed off on before handing it all over for the end of the pay period.
Yeah,
Guess
definitely
who's
don't let
better
them.
late than never?
I was just going to
Welcome.
say, Bonnie, glad you could join us.
Yes.
I went
To
out to
finish,
dinner with everybody, so I am here.
No, it's fine. You're good.
yeah,
Lubricated, I hope.
just finish up
I
my
ended up
thought.
Yes,
having
I
to jump
am.
out. I ended up having to jump out for a minute, come back in. So
Yeah. So we'll just
as
finish
far as
this
it is,
topic really
David's
quick.
handling it fine.
Yeah. Let's just finish this really quick, and then we'll get Kristen back in the swing of things here.
Okay.
The other thing is, if your management is changing your times on your clock, including breaks or anything like that that you did not do, they are falsifying a government document, and you should contact your local union representative about that because they should not be falsifying documents, especially your timesheet. So make sure if they are, contact your local union rep.
And remember too, if you're talking to a local rep or an area rep and you're not liking what you hear, you can go above their head. Don't feel like you have to accept their answer and walk away sad, head drooping.
So, Kristen, how was your week now that you're back with us?
Oh, where do I begin?
Well, at the beginning would be good.
Well, we'll
Well,
start
we-
with Monday being the holiday. I had to go in and case mail. I was the only one that showed up, so I had the three heavier K routes I got cased, and that was it. Tuesday ended up being a 13.5 hour day for me. I had to run my primary and my auxiliary on Tuesday. And then when I got back, I then had to go take the last 45 minutes off of the other sub to get him back. And it was about 8:30 when I finally clocked out.
What a mess.
Actually, it was 12 and a half hours for me because I started an hour later than everybody else.
Bro.
Yesterday really, really, really sucked. Um, Thursday and Friday were pretty good. I just had my aux route. Then at 10:30 Friday night, my regular on my primary route, who happens to be a really good friend of mine, calls me. He was having some pain and thought it'd be best to go to the ER, and then couldn't get a hold of his son and nobody else really to take him. So at 10:30 at night, I was heading out to go pick him up and the hour drive to the ER. Luckily, it was not major, and it was about 4:30 in the morning when we got home. He had a doctor's note to put him off for yesterday. Unfortunately, they wouldn't give me one. But so after about an hour and a half of a nap, if I even slept that much, I then had to go in, run the 45K, and split my primary route with the two other RCAs who have never carried that route ever before. So yesterday ended up being about an 11 and a half hour day on about an hour of sleep. That sums up my week.
Like a blast.
You forgot one detail about Monday.
What was
You had to
that?
wait for the parade to go by
Oh
before you could go home when you got done.
yeah. I was scheduled to work 9 to 11 Monday. Our local Memorial Day parade goes right past the post office. That started at 11 o'clock, and because of my house is only literally a block away where my road is to turn down to go home, I had to sit at the post office and wait for the parade to finish so I could go home. Yep. Luckily, it was a short one, so 15, 20 minutes. That was it. Yeah.
So we were talking RCA questions and figuring out answers for RCAs. Is there anything you want to add to that? Any questions you had?
I don't have questions. I still am an RCA.
Well, I meant questions that modern RCAs would ask.
Well, we've
was
gone over already pay. We've gone over the being sent to other offices. We've gone over, what else did we go over?
A lot of stuff, actually.
I have you guys. I have
Reading the
not
pay
been
stub.
listening, obviously, because I will have to go back and listen.
Yeah.
That's why I'm reviewing what we've discussed so far.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
It's kind of a niche topic, POV. I don't know how many of those are still out there. I'm one. And there's a lot of people. Actually, I'm not gonna reveal my opinion. I'm going to ask you guys what the rules are regarding having a backup vehicle. You're already required to have your one vehicle for a POV route. Of course, there's the perennial argument about whether all RCAs are supposed to have a POV, and it seems like the Postal Service hasn't even tried to enforce that in recent years. But what happened? The
POV thing? Technically, the job description does state that an RCA is supposed to have a vehicle available. And it's the same as it goes with the regular carriers, that you are supposed to have a vehicle operational for the route. It does not say that you are supposed to have two vehicles. It just says that you are supposed to maintain a vehicle to run the route with.
And then what do you tell the mouth breathers that come back and say to you, no, the contract says you got to have a vehicle in good working order, so go rent one from Hertz, or go club your grandma over the head and steal her Cadillac and get a buddy to drive you around?
Yeah, see, that's the issue. Especially with offices that are only POVs. I've had that issue to where I've had POVs break down. And I've used a daily driver, which was not male friendly, trust me. I have borrowed a vehicle from a regular to run the route in the past. It eventually the post office's goal is to have a government vehicle on every route. But until that actually happens, which I'm never going to hold my breath for because I would be long dead before that actually happened.
That was what they wanted when they started with the Jeeps.
Yeah. I've
They
had
wanted.
I've had a car break down on me in the route, and my son has come out and drove me the rest of the route. I had an ex drive me on the route a couple times because the car broke down in the middle of the route.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, he wasn't an ex at the time, he's an ex now. But
Oh.
I have used my boyfriend's full-size Chevy truck to deliver a 93-mile route.
Well, and if I remember correctly, the actual verbiage in regards to that is all rural carriers, with the exception of regular carriers assigned to a route with a government vehicle, are required to have a vehicle for driving. And if I remember correctly, in Academy, we were told that for it to be a good vehicle for delivery, you must be able to use your left foot and hand to drive and steer, and be able to extend your right arm out 6 inches, at least 6 inches out of the window for a left-hand drive vehicle.
Well,
Obviously,
that
if it's a
sucks for
right-hand
short
drive,
people.
huh?
That's 6 inches.
That sucks for short people.
Like I said, I'm just saying that's what we were told going through the academy. That was 16 and a half years ago. Like you just said, Clyde, that now it's a matter of whether or not they even tell you you need a vehicle available. And like Kristen said, with these Metros vans that they just, they purchased a couple years ago, and there's supposed to be a second phase of those coming soon. They primarily are going to rural routes that are POVs, and some of the city routes that had the old Grand Caravans. They were looking to replace with these, which are very few and far between anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way. There are just routes out there that, I mean, whether it's an electric vehicle with its range limitations or whether it's a freaking LLV from the 80s, there's routes out there, predominantly gravel. I mean, neither one will work. I mean, the electric one might survive for a week, but the rattle effect, forget it.
I know my route's going to destroy one of those new electric ones for sure within the first week, and I have only 50% of my routes gravel. And
have they changed it from the 10% electric? Have they increased that number, or?
I think the electric ones are going to hit the southern states more than they are anything northern, because you start getting up north and where we get the cold temperatures, that's going to kill that battery life real quick.
Those electric ones are going to go to inner city urban routes.
They're going to go to city carriers.
They're going to go to city carriers. The electric ones are going to go to city carriers because first of all, we don't have the infrastructure for any electric vehicles at the moment. So not only are you talking to vehicles, now you have to purchase all these charging stations
and install them to the grid.
Yep.
Yeah. Like my office, we can set it up in my office. We've got a 12 route office. We can actually set it up in our office. But like you were saying, 250 route office, there's no way that grid's going to handle charging 250 vehicles.
Well,
and I know they're split up amongst a bunch of other stations, but still, you're looking at. I got an office down the road from me that's 70 routes in it. That office is going to have 70 electric vehicles charging at the same time. What's that going to do to the power grid?
Offices are going to be
regardless.
Yeah, regardless city or rural, you're looking at 2, 3, 500 routes in one building.
Mm-hmm.
If these are new buildings and Postmaster General is having them redone completely as part of the rehab, they could put in the charging stations through the parking lot for these vehicles. But
So do we
time
all
will
like
tell.
agree that RCAs are not required to provide 2 vehicles or a backup vehicle?
Correct. It's not contractual. It does not say you have to have 2 vehicles. It just says you have to have a vehicle.
Right.
In good
to
operating
handle
order.
the daily volume of mail. The daily volume of mail. So you could have a little Ford Escort that can handle your 4 trays of DPS and 2 trays of flats, and it's an adequate vehicle. It's the
And
packages that are the problem.
is that a clear distinction that they stick to this day?
I think a lot of people find that distinction to not be accurate.
I do
But-
believe it's in the P603 that it's supposed to handle the average daily volume.
Average daily volume, and it says of mail.
I think it does say mail-in packages, but
We'll
I
they
don't
can't
know where my
force
personal
you.
copy of the 603 is, so I couldn't tell you right now.
and
Let me
they,
look.
and a lot of it is in my opinion, that if it's not all going to fit in an LLV, I shouldn't have to buy the largest Ford Transit possible to be able to deliver all the packages that are on my route.
Well, I can tell you from experience, I know a young lady, I forget what she was driving. It was an SUV or minivan type thing. And because she couldn't fit all the packages in the vehicle every day, they tried telling her she had to get a bigger vehicle. She grieved it, and as part of her statement in her grievance, she put in the cubic feet in the interior of the vehicle, which was larger than an LLB, which ended up killing that from management because her vehicle was already larger than the government vehicles being used. So so she would say, the argument was, if there was an LLB on this route, which is not as large as this, would you be required to change the LLB to a different vehicle, to a larger vehicle?
Okay. In the P603, Section 14, Equipment and Supplies, Carrier Responsibilities. Vehicle equipment. You are responsible for furnishing all vehicle equipment necessary for safe and prompt handling of mail unless a USPS-owned leased vehicle is assigned to the route. Vehicle requirements. Your personal vehicle must be large enough to accommodate the normal mail volume and constructed to protect the mail from loss or damage. Commercial advertising must not be displayed on your vehicle while serving the route.
I like how all we're used to the word vehicle is singular at this point,
Yes.
not vehicles.
For each day you serve a route using your own vehicle, the USPS pays you the EMA in accordance with the applicable schedule. In addition, when acts of God prevent you from performing your duties, the postmaster may authorize administrative leave. You will receive EMA for each service day you report to the post office and are scheduled to perform delivery. Exceptions, USPS owned or leased vehicle. If you fail to serve any part of the route due to lack of proper endeavor, proper equipment, or other failure for which you are responsible, deductions are made from your salary or EMA. For partial failure, deductions are made at the rate of pay per mile for services on routes of 30 miles and less. For failure to perform services on part of the route in excess of 30 miles, deductions are made at the rate of pay for such additional mileage. Let's see. That is all I am seeing. Yeah, that is the 603. It does not say you have to have a backup vehicle.
No, and I agree 100%. You shouldn't have to have a backup vehicle because now you have the expense of if there's a payment, which let's face it, nowadays you're not realistically not getting into a vehicle without a payment.
And then what about
And the
RCAs?
insurance.
Yeah. And then what about the
So
RCAs out there working 7 days a week? And
Yeah.
I mean, vehicles, right, require maintenance. Sure, people can do an oil change, but what if you throw a belt or something, and then
Or you got a brake line that goes out, or we go through pads and rotors and calipers. I have in my experience, I've been at that parts store at 6 a.m. grabbing calipers, rotors, and pads, and I'm out there in the driveway at 6:30 in the morning changing out my brakes so I can be at work by 7:30. I've done it, unfortunately. I mean, it's unrealistic, and especially with RCAs or even regulars in routes with no RCAs or coverage available to get any type of maintenance done. Or if you have a breakdown, and then what?
What if your suspension goes out? You're not going to be doing shocks and struts by yourself. You're going to have to go to somebody who has a spring compressor to be able to fix that.
Or you just drive down the road with it bouncing like I do.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You look like you got hydraulics as you're delivering the mail.
Oh yeah, it's a bouncing. That's the only car I have right now to drive, so it's a bouncing.
well, and that was going to be the flip side of my comment. There is no requirement, but if you know you have an older vehicle that potentially is going to have, or not potentially will have maintenance issues, it might not be a bad idea to try and find something as a backup.
Or
at
have
least have a backup plan.
Yes, I was going to say a backup plan, especially for RCAs. I mean, if you're one of those in a somewhat staffed office and you're only working, 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 days a month, you're not going to be able to afford insurance on 2 vehicles. Depending on, well, I come from Michigan, we have astronomical insurance rates anyways. So, it's hard to afford to be able to do that. You could have something go out. I've had a gas pump go out on me and on the route. It stuff like that is going to happen, and it's always good to have at least a backup plan. I mean, I was raised in my household anyways. We always had backup for the car and backup for the backup. I've always had access to at least another vehicle that I could probably somewhat maneuver on a mail route. But not everybody has that availability. And so it's just
like, for example, I just had a month and a half ago, I was driving my sister-in-law's car because the engine blew on my wife's car and the timing belt skipped and blew the engine on hers. So within 6 months, I had 2 vehicles die on me.
I kept my POV. I was thinking about getting rid of it because I've been running all LLV routes forever. And even when I do my primary route, I usually do it in coordinates with my aux route. So I get to use my aux truck instead of using my POV. And I actually had thought about getting rid of it, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to wait until I go full time and I know I'll be on the LLV route. Then I don't have to worry about it, which I was actually really glad I did because, when you have irresponsible teenagers who just take other people's cars and total them out, Anything can happen.
Tell us how you
Yeah.
really feel.
And before I got before I got the new vehicle, I was lucky enough that my buddy who, lives by himself was kind enough to lend me his right-hand side Jeep so I could get to and from work. I'm on an LLP route, so I didn't need it for work, but I needed to be able to get, something reliable to get to and from. And it's funny because I was talking to him and he's like, oh, when I asked him after, he took a day to just think about it and he said, oh, call me back the next morning to let me know, yes, he would let me. And he starts telling me, oh, don't worry. When you first turn it on, this light, this light, this light, this light's going to come on, the airbag light, because it's a factory, conversion.
Mm-hmm.
So they took the left-hand side seat out to put the mail tray in, which means they had to disconnect the left-hand side airbag, which disconnects the whole airbag system, so that light's on. Then he has like 2 or 3 other lights on the dash. One I don't even know if he knows what it is.
That would be
He's
the
like,
proper Jeep Christmas tree, yes.
Yep, that's what he says. He's like, you like the Christmas tree? Then he's saying, so when you get down, when you fill, he's like, use the trip whenever, when you fill it up with gas, because when it gets down to under 3/4, somewhere between a half and 3/4, the fuel light or the check engine light comes on. Well, so I'm like, it gets down to 3/4. I'm like, and then it goes down, it gets almost to the halfway point. That came on. I'm like, okay. And I have the kid in the car with me in the back seat because I figured out how to move the carpets and whatever and put the back seat up. So, because he keeps the seats down because he uses that when he takes it on the route, he uses it for the packages. So the kid's somewhere to sit with a seatbelt. And we stopped on the way home at McDonald's for lunch. And like I said, it was sitting at just over a half tank. The needle just goes down to E, and the low fluid, the I'm thirsty bitch light came on. I'm like, now I know what he's talking about. Well, when I talked to him the next day and told him about it, later that afternoon, when I cranked it back up, it was fine again. He says, yeah, that's new. I've never seen that one before. I'm like, great. Don't tell me this thing's going to die too.
So according to the P603, you're just supposed to have a vehicle. Doesn't say you're supposed to have a vehicle and a backup vehicle.
Doesn't say vehicles.
No, but it is not plural.
It just is a route-ready vehicle that can handle the daily mail volume.
Yes.
Have you guys seen this problem show up in grievances in your time? I mean, have you seen this thing? Because I read tons of stories where postmasters or supervisors are basically bullying people into going out and stealing another car. Have you seen it?
More in Bill's area. I don't think we've been around long enough for that.
No, I haven't.
I personally have not experienced anyone having an issue with that, but I know people who've had their POV. They were out, they ended up having to call out for a day or two.
Or a week, depending on what was wrong.
Because they couldn't get the time to do maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was either they called out for the bay so they could do whatever maintenance they needed to do, change the oil, brake pads, just routine maintenance that you have to do every so often. Or it got to the point where it was not running and they needed a day or two or a week and couldn't get another vehicle. But then again, that week they were burning annual time if they put it as transportation is the reason, and not getting the EMA that week.
I am looking up some other stuff, see if we got any. Automatic transmission is not required, according to a Step 4 in 1985.
I would say, I can tell you when I went through the academy, the instructors that I had would not approve a stick if you were straddling. For the reason that it would be in the way and you could not get out of gear.
Plus, how do you operate the clutch from the right side of the car?
Carefully.
Gotta have some long legs for that one.
I trained with a carrier once in my old office who delivered out of a Ford Escort at one time, stick shift. I said, "How do you do that?" He goes, "You keep it in second gear and just keep going."
Yeah.
Oh.
You're realistically, you're not going faster than that. And if you have that much deadhead time, you're supposed to be behind the wheel anyway.
Of course, this was when there was a lot less packages too.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. From technically in a POG, from the post office to your first box, you're supposed to be behind the wheel. And then if you have deadhead time from one neighborhood to another, you're supposed to get behind the wheel and then switch over when you get to the first box in the next neighborhood. I knew someone that the way she had the actual pedal for the emergency brake. She had a cane that she would use and push down because she had the conversion kit with the pulley with the belt from the old wheel with the pedals. So to hit her emergency brake, she would had a cane and she just sat in there, off to the side, and she would just. And then when she got in and got it cranked up and everything, she'd use the cane to push it down to release it.
Interesting. So another question that we keep popping up and seeing in places is, what happens with an act of God? What happens? How do we get paid for stuff like that? We're in tornado season. We've had post offices get hit with tornadoes. We also have post offices that have been sunk in blizzards and major snowstorms. Somebody want to go ahead and answer that one?
Well, if
it's administrative leave,
it could.
Unfortunately, RCAs are.
If they were scheduled to work that day. But if it's a call, if they're calling you off due to an act of God, if you were scheduled that day, it could be. I would have to double check, so don't quote me. It could be like say if you service an aux route, or you're a designated 74, or you're scheduled the regulars on a Caribbean cruise and you get stuck during blizzard season. If you're on the schedule, it should fall under the administrative leave as well. If you're able to make it into the office and there's mail to case, but they're not going to send you out, then you would still get paid the evaluation of the route.
Yeah, an RCA should get a minimum of 2 hours if they were scheduled.
I can't speak from experience. But I would say it would more than likely, you would more than likely have to go
I
through the
remember
grievance
reading.
process for that. But again, I don't, I've never had like I said, in the 16 and a half years I've been with the post office, they've called off delivery 2 times, and they were in more recent years than in the past. So,
Yeah, unfortunately, when they called off in my office, I was already a regular, and so I got my evaluated pay. So,
right.
All right. It does not differentiate. Does not. All right. It doesn't
Differentiate.
it. Yes, thank you. It does not distinguish between a regular or an RCA. It just says acts of God. When acts of God prevent an employee from performing the employee's duty, the employer may authorize administrative leave. EMA will be paid for each service day a rural carrier reports to the post office and is scheduled to perform delivery. If the carrier fails to serve all or any portion of the route due to lack of proper endeavor or any failure which the carrier is responsible, appropriate deductions from salary and EMA will be based on miles omitted. So it just says employee.
talk with your local union representative for guidance.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is
Like,
for
like I said,
entertainment purposes only.
Yep, yep.
I would not, I've never seen or had, one way or another with that. But I don't, if they authorize the administrative leave, I don't think initially they're going to include the RCAs. That they will most likely have to work with their local union representative.
All right. So here's another good one that comes in. Subs doing multiple routes, including running packages for city carriers. Basically, parcel assistance. Do you fill out a green card just for your time, or should you write down the routes you assist with? This is going to management is going to, that's their own thing, whether they want a separate green card for each route. Or I know in my office on one green card, but I have to separate each route out by the little sections, the start and end time. But yeah, you would go with each of the individual route. That would be up to management's discretion on whether they want it all on one green card or a separate green card for every route.
Well, okay, I've always been taught you use one green card until you fill it up front and back, and then you switch, regardless of route by route. But like you said, each office is going to be done
Yeah,
differently.
each manager is
If
going to
they
have
are
what they prefer
sending
on that.
you on a parcel run, I would just write parcel run, started at 9 a.m., finished at 2 p.m. And how many
Yep.
miles?
Our office prefers it to be each day it's your clock in, clock out, and if you have a lunch break in there, you put that in the other 2 slots in each section for the green card. And then you write
Uh,
down what you did in the notes.
Mine would prefer that each section, or at least on the note side, your time in and time out for each route that you assisted.
Yeah.
Even when I go in case routes on a holiday, they wanted me to divide my time up by which routes I did. That way they can charge a financial charge to that route rather
Right.
than just putting it in as a 999, 991, 998, or whatever the hell they want to do it as.
And this applies to ARCs too. ARCs
Yes.
that do parcel assistance during mail delivery week. It applies to them too. ARCs are for parcel delivery. They're not for mail delivery. If an ARC's being used for mail delivery, they shouldn't be.
With the
Although there are
exception
of Saturdays.
of Saturdays if they've gone through the RCA Academy.
RCA Academy. Yep. Now,
Did anybody start to talk about training newbies? But we can save that for a totally different episode.
Well, we got into that. I was late jumping into the conversation in the beginning due to being on the phone with my father and brother who were assisting me in answering the questions for the facilitator application. That I need to fill out the paper this evening. I just was trying to write my answers so I can apply for the Rural Academy, because Rural Academy and orientation facilitators
Is that what
are
you're
up.
doing?
Huh?
Okay.
Oh, that's what I'm hoping to do. I actually have
Nice.
a supervisor that will sign off on a reference for me. So she hasn't been here long enough to get to know me.
Another question we have is, can RCAs do anything with the union? Yes, RCAs can do
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I am prime example of that. As an RCA, I am a local steward. I am an OJI. I am a mapping facilitator. I have been a county unit treasurer. I'm currently a county unit vice president. I know of RCAs that have been area stewards and ADRs. I have ran for national office as an RCA. You can be a delegate to your state convention, to national convention. You can go to all your local meetings, all your state boosters, and you're still protected under that nifty little article in the contract. I believe it's number 24.
Yes.
As an RCA, yes, you can be extremely active as much as you want. In fact, I am off this tomorrow and Tuesday. I am actually recording tonight from a hotel, because my state board meetings are open to membership to observe, and I am observing my state board meeting the next 2 days.
Give them hell.
I
That's
am
a long
observing. I'm not participating. I am there observing.
Fuck
You
them
can
up.
always do a point of order. You can ask questions under point of order.
That is possible, or they can, if they're looking for input on something, they will ask us for input. So yes, it is very possible to be extremely active in the union.
An ARC can also be involved in the union as well. You can go to county meetings, you can go to state meetings, you can become a delegate as well. You also can have a voice in this whole thing. There's no designation between an ARC and RCA or a rural carrier in the rural union.
All right,
Hey,
here's another. Yes.
one quick follow-up, Kristen. Do you get any grief, or at least initially? I don't know how long you've had your current postmaster, but do you get any pushback for?
I did at first when I came into this office, because I started in another office. It was actually my regular that trained me in my first office. Actually, I'm rooming with her at state convention this year. She actually is the one that, it was her and her husband that took me to my first local meeting, because her husband was a carrier at the time too. He's the one that nominated me to be treasurer at the time, and I got it, held it for 4 years. She's the one that dragged me off, because that was back in the good old days when there was a full complement of subs in an office. And she actually took me to my first conventions. She worked for me to go to my first booster. I went with another carrier. So I was so used to having that relationship and being able to do that stuff in that office, being involved, that when I came into the office that I'm in now, they were not used to anybody being active at all in that office. In fact, I remember my first postmaster in this office, I was on my way and I had my approved leave slip, because you have to go to your annual enhancement training that you're required to do. I was actually getting onto the freeway. I was already an hour away from home. And she calls me telling me, well, I need you to come in and run Route 5. I said, that's impossible today. I said, I am on my way to my training that I am mandated to go to. So you're telling me you're not coming in? No, I have an approved slip for that. I am not coming in. Well, I'm going to write that down. Oh, right ahead. I mean, I got there and I let the DR know. We just kind of laughed it off. But yeah, I did have quite a bit of pushback at first as an RCA, because in the past, the RCAs that were there were always told, that was before RCAs earned leave too, that you're an RCA, you're not allowed to request any time off for anything. You can't have a life. I mean, that was the big push in the office at the time. And then when I came in and I had already been doing union work for 3.5 years. And now all of a sudden I'm in and I'm putting requests in for conventions and everything. I was bringing up that article quite a bit. And it's got to the point now that as long as, I put it in, they don't even hesitate anymore. They just give it to me off. Yeah, I did have a lot of pushback at first.
You don't get pushback even if you're a regular carrier too.
Yep. Whenever I submit my my leave request for union stuff, I always attach a copy of Article 24, which I have multiple copies somewhere.
And it's just going to be worse until they figure out a way to get us at least 90% staffed.
It's going to be a problem until we get pay back up.
What?
It's going to be a problem until management learns to treat RCAs like human beings.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pay and treatment are the two biggest things.
Right now, it definitely is. I mean, I have worked for absolutely wonderful management. I have worked for not so great management. Right now, I'm kind of in between. But it's hearing the horror stories come out of other offices with RCAs. Number one, the times that we are in now with RCAs and people just wanting to work in general, and not just work, doing hard work. This is not, we don't just drive around the trucks tossing mail all day. That's the easy part of the job. It's, this can be a big mental challenge too. And a lot of people don't get that. It can be a physical challenge, which some may have an issue with. It's, this job isn't for everybody, but to find people nowadays that, especially with what went on a few years ago and people getting all comfortable with working at home or living off the government or not working at all, and then wanting to come in and then gonna push comes to shove and okay, I actually have to work. But then when you have management that treats them less than human,
Like
and
they're
bullies,
disposable.
exactly. And there's absolutely no positive reinforcement in some of these offices, and they run you ragged, and it gets to a point, somebody, you can only take so much. Anybody can only take so much. So unless you have somebody that's looking out for you to stand up for you or stand up for yourself, I mean, the easy job is just to leave. But when you hear the horror stories and people are seeing the horror stories, people are hearing the horror stories, people are seeing the news reports, you're getting this, people talk to carriers, less and less people are going to want to come to this job. I remember when this job was an extremely coveted job. There was wait lists to get into the post office. RCAs waited 20 years to go full time.
Yeah.
Some still do.
Some still, yeah, depending on the area you're in, you still do. I mean, I've already got 8.5 years under my belt, and for some, that wasn't, they're like, well, that was less than me. It's, nobody wants to stay with a job that long, especially one that's feast or famine. You are either working 1 day a week or you're working 7 days a week, and you don't know. It varies from week to week. You're running one route a day, or you're running a route and a half or 2 routes a day. It's one of those unpredictable jobs, and I totally get that. But when you add the fact on of incompetent management and management that don't know how to treat people with respect and want to belittle and berate and stomp on you, you don't want to work for them. And I don't want to say this in a bad way, But there are a lot of regular carriers out there that treat the subs assigned to their route like they're their personal employee, and
I,
they think
I
they can
dare you. I
just
dare you.
or they just or they're completely wrapped up in their own agenda, and they don't think about that person that's subbing on their route, and they don't communicate with them. I mean, that's the hardest thing. It's like when I first started, I had a regular who communicated everything. We had a notebook, so we left notes for each other on anything important, anything like that. And so we were always in the know, or she'd call me, or I'd call her, you know. And then you work on routes where the regular leaves, there's no communication whatsoever. And it's
The
like,
carrier that
how
says, you get the carrier that says, I was treated this way, so I'm going to treat you that way.
exactly? And to me, that's not right. I mean, I've already talked to one of our the sub that's on the route that I'm taking, that I'll eventually be taking over here in a few months. And he's like, wow. He's like, I really, he doesn't mind the work. He really doesn't. He likes the job, but he's like, I want to be able to see, go to some of my kids, soccer and baseball games and see my son grow up. And I can feel that and relate to that because I started this job as a single parent. My kids were all three of my kids were in school or just starting school when I started this job. My son's grown and on his own now. My daughter's going to be a senior next year if she passes summer school, and my other one's just going into middle school. And I missed a ton with them growing up because of this job. But at the same time, I get that. But like I told him, I said, dude, I said, I'm going to be the low man on the totem pole. I don't expect to get Saturdays off because I'm going to be the low man of the totem pole. So he'll be where I said, but if there's a time or if there's a day that you need off because you want to go to your son's game or you got this going on, I said, just let me know ahead of time. I said, I don't have a problem with that. You gotta communicate. And subs RCAs need to communicate with their regulars too. I've seen a lot of RCAs that want to come in and they're just going to come in, do my job, go home, and they do absolutely nothing. They don't help keep up like with hold cards and PARS labels. Even if a regular says, I have one regular in my office that says if you get when she's off, she's like, put my PARS labels on here. Don't put them on the cards because I need to physically see them myself in order for it. I said, yeah, that's no problem. But you know what? When I get those PARS labels, I'm still looking at them. So I know, hey, am I forwarding somebody's mail today? I know her system on holds. So I go ahead and I put her holds up the normal way. And I pull them, before I leave. If she's coming back the next day, I usually try and pull those returning holds for her. It's like I said in the past before, as an RCA, and it doesn't matter what route you're walking into, take ownership of that route. And try to leave, even if it's just a sticky note or a blank piece of paper with some notes of like, hey, I noticed this, or there's a new box up now at this address, or something. Communication, I think, is number one, especially between the assigned RCA and the regular on that route. There has to be some sort of positive communication, even if it's just about what's going on that route. Yeah, that's on marking cases and creating cheat sheets. Help them where if when it's at all possible. I mean, I'm still helping the other two. I still have the one that's kind of struggling with a few addresses on the case, and every day. I mean, even yesterday, I had to case up the 45K that I was running. I had to case up my 40K that I was splitting, and I had to case up my aux route and get that ready to go for the regular carrier that took it for me, thankfully. And then I had to take my primary route and I had to split that up. I didn't mark any packages for my half because, well, I don't have to. But knowing that I had somebody brand new that had never ran that route or doesn't even know that area at all because they're new to our area in general, I had to go through with the parcel markers and write the addresses on there and put everything in order. Then I pulled it all down. Then I had to go back to the 45K and mark those packages and pull that down and load it up. But I still took that time while he was trying to get out on his 41K route. And he's like, I can't find these addresses on the case. And it's those oddball ones where you have one box here, turn around, one back. And so, I still took that time to stop and say, okay. He's like, I'm having a hard time finding these. And he'd show me the address. And of course, I hadn't slept in over 24 hours at this point. And so the numbers aren't clicking with me, but I looked at the name. I'm like, oh, so-and-so. I said, yep, upper, right-hand corner, third row. And I was pointing it out to him rather than just doing it for him. That way he can get that visual. But, be that mentor to that RCA. Even if you are an RCA and you've been around for a while, you know the routes, you can still take that time to help those newer struggling RCAs. There has to be some sort of camaraderie within the office in order to make it work and for it to be positive. You tell I've been drinking tonight?
No, not at all.
And that's also on regular carriers to take care of the RCAs, because the RCAs are going to get crapped on a lot, and it's our job to help lift them up. It's our job to help them with the job. It's our job to teach them the right way to do things. It's our job to help make sure that management's treating them by the contract. We have to look out for each other, whether we're an RCA, an ARC, a PTF, or a regular carrier. We have to look out for each other, take care of each other, because we're all we got. We are our union. Every one of us, dues paying and non-dues paying. We have to take care of each other.
We do. And I think taking care of RCAs is number one at this point, especially as a regular. And if you want some time off, you need to take care of that RCA.
Yeah.
As an RCA who only gets time off for union functions and very rarely anything personal, please take care of that RCA. Because I am really glad I already had this time pre-approved, because I needed to get away.
Well, we all need to get away from this job every once in a while.
But I'm here for union stuff. So it's,
So you're technically still working, just
well, yeah.
not at the office.
Exactly. I'm actually away from the office more this week than I'm actually there. I worked Saturday. I'm away Monday, Tuesday. I'll be there Wednesday. I'm away Thursday for my annual training. And I am back on Friday. Yeah.
And then the end of the month you have the state. Then the end of the month you have the state convention.
Absolutely. And I'm off for the whole week.
And then 2 months later you have the national convention.
Yep, but I do have personal weekend off in July, so I will be far away. And actually, I will not be on that Sunday because, well, Slipknot will be performing. I'm not going to be here recording. I'll be at a concert, so 3-day weekend. Honestly, I don't know how many RCAs we lost due to wrecks.
Nobody's releasing those numbers.
No, even though routes went to from K's to H's, H routes are still entitled to a leave replacement. I have been
technically, Ox routes are.
Yes, and designated 74s as well.
Yeah, RCAs holding down are allowed to have a relief carrier.
Yes, and an Ox route can have a relief carrier. Yes, every route is entitled to a relief carrier.
Now, I would say, speaking of such things, the RCA holding down a route is entitled to a relief day, but not necessarily the same relief day posted for the regular.
Correct. Usually, I think I have seen it at one time. It says on the lightest day of the week, but that doesn't necessarily always happen.
Well, it's, and I've heard actually at management's discretion on giving that relief day.
Yep.
To the RCA, which means you may work through 6 days. You can work, if you're going pushing eval or higher, most of the time they're probably going to give you a relief day. If you can request that you get a relief day each week, but no guarantee or promises with that.
Especially depending on staffing as well.
Yes.
So I have a question for you guys. So if you have an RCA that's borrowed from another office, who obviously was not trained properly in that office when it comes to basics like holds and forwards, like they thought PARS labels were holds and not forwards.
Mm.
How would you handle that? Because they're not technically an employee of your office.
If you,
Fix them.
yeah, I would just, if they question you on, hey, what do I do with this? You help them out, let them know. I have seen,
I
granted, keep in mind, I'm in a different, my office is a different beast than anywhere in the world.
yes, we know
I've
this.
seen where they've called back an RCA from another station for an II in my station with my management team due to something they did on the one day that they were brought into my station. So if that's the case, then you would represent them because the potential discipline's coming from your office. Well,
Yeah,
I can't
my
do that
my
for, that's something that, I would definitely find out from your representatives on how that should be handled. But
and I agree on that one. Suggestion is obviously take them under your wing and teach them too. I mean, which I tend to do that to a point. I may have an interesting situation on my hands because we do have a carrier that's out for an undetermined amount of time right now. And the borrowed RCA only works in his office on Saturdays, regular's K day. The rest of the week, he is with us running that one route. Technically, I don't fight it right now. I don't fight it because I cover everything in the office, but a couple of the routes that we do have the other RCAs on. But technically, I do believe I would be entitled to those hours ahead of him, even though I am assigned an aux route.
well, as a double-edged sword there,
Yes, it is. Like I
because
said, I don't make a huge deal about it at all because I can
what's going
cover.
to end up happening, is this isn't your silver record though, right?
No.
Okay. So because you're assigned to your
I'm a 5-1.
aux route, you only earn sick on your aux route.
Correct.
So you're losing that if you work the other route.
No, normally I run that other route with my aux route.
And that comes to a less than 12-hour scheduled.
45K is 9 hours plus 2.58 hours. Yes, I'm just under the 12 hours scheduled.
Okay. And I'm going to presume on a regular day, or a typical day, I should say, you're running it in less than that. Maybe not by
Yes.
much, but you're running it in less. Okay, so we don't have the 12
Usually
hours.
I'm usually running it in less than the 9 hours, yes.
Well, I'm saying the two combined. If you're
Mhm.
doing the two combined, it's going to be
Oh
less
yeah.
than the 12.
Oh yeah.
So that's that's a catch 22 because
Yep.
As a senior RCA, yes, you could get those hours, but you're assigned to the Ox route, which means you're already scheduled.
But
But you understand what I'm saying? You know where I'm coming
no,
from? I mean,
yep.
it's a
I
catch.
completely
It's a
understand
catch
what you're saying.
22 because yes, you're the senior RCA, so you should be able to catch those hours. Take that route if no one else has it on their matrix.
And currently, no.
But on the on the flip side of that coin is you're assigned to the and supposed to be scheduled on the Ox route.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I'm not sure where exactly it is, but I know for sure your name can show up on 7 4240s for the week,
Yes, it can. And
which
sometimes it
is
does.
supposed to be your Ox route 6 days and your primary on that 6th day, which would be the
Or
7th.
as a 5-in-1, it could be 5 days on the Ox route and then have one of the other RCAs take it if I'm running my primary. But
Right.
in
Well,
general,
that's what I
I'm
said.
entitled to, but in general, I'm entitled to both of those routes hours.
Your regular and the Ox route.
Yep.
But if your regular is off, they should be sliding into your regular route and technically getting coverage for the Ox.
And this is
If
where
it's
the issue
available.
came in yesterday. Was the fact that I was scheduled to run Route 4 and my Ox route, which is no big deal. It's under the 12 hours. And my primary is the one that could not make it in due to the medical issue.
Right. Which was
So
a call
now,
out, which
yeah. And it's actually his K day
technically
too. So, yeah, technically I'm
you're
already
already
scheduled.
scheduled. So that technically pulls you out of the running there. However, management can say, we're going to switch you to your primary, to your silver record, and put the other person on this other route.
Which was not possible because they were both working their
Right.
assigned routes. Now here's the issue.
Right.
Now in that circumstance, you would think that they would try to get a hold of one of the regulars that are off to see if they would come in. Am I right?
That is a possibility that they could have, an avenue they could have tried.
Unless
However,
you're
I'm not required to answer my phone
no, but
as the regular.
unless you're under my POOM, who says you need to contact him first to get permission before you can call a regular in.
And I would be inquiring about that directive through your district representative or assistant district rep, just to see if that is something that is, because the order of consideration says RCAs in your office, leave replacements in your office. Then they
Everybody's
have the
assigned
option
a
to bring
route.
somebody.
Yep.
They have the option. At that point, they have, and the keyword is option, to bring someone in.
Nobody available.
The
Come
next
in on a Saturday.
is
Relief day work list.
relief day work list.
Neither one of
Volunteer
them.
by seniority.
Or
Mandate by juniority.
Yep.
But if you're already into the day, it's already the day of, your hands are tied on, you can't say anything to the regular if they don't answer their phone because
Uh-huh.
it's their scheduled day off. And like I finally got my management team taught that if you don't tell me the day before, consider my phone turned off until the next time I'm scheduled.
So yeah,
You
so
know what I'm
so
saying?
that's what I found out yesterday is people under this particular poom management needs to contact him to get permission prior to attempting to call in a regular on their relief day. So that left
Now
me, and I told
is that just calling them in or scheduling them and saying you're mandated to work tomorrow or this
calling them,
weekend?
as far as I know, calling them in because if they're on the relief day work list, they're already getting scheduled. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
Hence, that's why my regular had to call out because he was already scheduled because they had me covering the other route.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So yesterday was a clusterfuck.
It just
Um,
sounds like someone wanting to micromanage.
it's exactly that is 100% exactly the boom that I have.
Shocker.
So yeah,
Can you milk a cat, Talker?
it's been a week for me. I will tell you that. On the positive note, because I want to try and wrap this up because it's getting kind of late, and I do appreciate Clyde joining us tonight. I'm sorry I missed 95% of it. I will go back and listen to it, and we can talk later. I will say though, I got all the insurance stuff taken care of with my car. For those that are listening to my little saga with my car getting totaled out, I actually have gotten my portion of the settlement back, which is enough to put a down payment on another one. And here's a shout out to Atlanta Postal Credit Union, everybody. If you haven't checked them out and you're looking for a credit union, please go check them out. They are fabulous. I called them as soon as I got off the phone with the insurance company when they told me that they had were sending the check out to pay off the lien on my car. I called them up. They looked it up. They said, "Yep, we have that noted." I said, "Do I have to wait till that payment's received before applying for a new loan?" She's like, "Nope, we can do that right now." And they approved me for my loan the next day. I got the confirmation and they approved me for the amount that I want. So I am hopefully by the beginning of next week will be driving my new car.
Nice.
Yes.
So I think we've been at it for almost 2 hours now.
Yeah, it's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Start
it has been
winding
almost two.
start winding it down, I think.
I agree. It was nice to come on here and get on here for a little bit, and you guys sticking around a little bit later since I got on here.
Yeah.
And thank
So-
you guys for holding it down while I was out having dinner with some other members of the union here in the great state of Michigan. So
Yeah, you'll have to tell me all about it later.
I will. Yes, it was a good time. Good
So,
food.
we'll start off with Clyde. You have any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
RCAs. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. If you were
Anytime.
to have me back,
Thank you for coming.
for whatever reason, I want you to know that my weird sense of humor will grow on you. But for RCAs out there, please don't take any shit. All right, your regular doesn't own you. A local union steward may or may not know what they're talking about. Don't be afraid to go up the chain of command, even if that means your DR. If you need contact information for your DR, you can find it pretty easily, either union website or go on Facebook and ask somebody. You are human, and don't let them push you around, because if you do, then that just spreads and affects the rest of us. So put up a fight. That's it.
Absolutely.
Your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, Clyde, thanks for coming. And I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I'm sure they agree you are welcome back anytime. Um, I would say if need be, you have the option also if you're not getting what you feel is the full, complete, correct answer from your DR, you have the right to contact your national representative for the different, and they have each member is a different region of the country, which you can look that up to see who's covering your area. The hard part is finally over. Unfortunately, we won't know for who knows how long how the dispute process will play out. Hopefully, everyone that did have disputes, it'll be favorable for them. Try and have a good week. If you get overwhelmed, try not to get overwhelmed. If you do, take a step back, take a deep breath, step back in. Have a good week, all.
James, your turn.
Well, I'm going to also agree with what Josh said. The biggest thing is to know who your contact information is all the way up the chain. Their biggest point of contact is your local assigned designated union representative, whether it be in office or your area steward. You could have your assistant district reps or your district reps. If you're part of the union, should get them in your state magazines that you get from them. If not, you can go on the NRLCA website and look that up. And you don't have to be a member to look that up either. And if not, you can also talk with the national board. If you're not, just like Josh said, it's the contact information is on the NRLCA website, and it's accessible to everybody, not just dues paying members. So remember, we're all in this together. We got to take care of each other. Our RCAs are the biggest part of the union membership that we have, because the RCAs are our next regular carriers. And our regular carriers need to remember that at one point they were subs too, and they should not treat their subs in negative ways. We want to keep them around as much as possible, not just for our scheduled days off, but because we're going to be retiring. We're going to be moving on to future endeavors in our life and our retirement, and they're going to be the ones stepping up to take over your route. So take care of your RCAs. RCAs, take care of your regular carriers. Let's make this the best years in the rural craft we can possibly do. Step up, take care of things, and learn your craft. Now it's your turn, Kristen.
All right. Again, I want to thank Clyde for joining us. You are welcome back anytime. Thank you to James and Josh for holding this down for me while I was out spending an evening with fellow union members. And I just had something and it totally escaped my mind. But no, on that note, like I said, it's, watching out for each other. I mean, regulars, please. I mean, there's a difference between coddling and helping and mentoring. I mean, coddling only goes so far, anyways. I'm not a coddler. I'm sorry. But I am there to mentor. I still check on my two other RCAs in my office on a regular basis. If there's anything and that also comes from not only being the senior RCA, but also the OJI. I try to check in and see where they're going. But yeah, RCAs really are the backbone. I don't know what my office would do right now without me, the way things have been going the last couple of weeks. I literally, it was all right, how are we going to cover these routes? And I pulled the other two RCAs and I said, I know either one of you have ran either of these two routes at all. So I'm going to split the smaller one. And I need one of you, if not both of you, to volunteer to help me, please. Because I can't run a 40K and a 45K on my own. and so they did. They came together. It's you kind of have to be a team. If you're in an office with more than just a handful of RCAs, you really kind of have to team up. In the past, I mean, before my current regular and my primary, when he was still in RCA, and we had another RCA that had transferred out, and it was the three of us. We were like the Three Musketeers. We always went out on smoke breaks together. The three of us still talk, even though one's not even in our office. You kind of have to build that camaraderie within the office as RCAs, and it definitely helps, especially if you're covering a route that you may not know as well, but another RCA does, and vice versa. You can help each other out, especially when it comes to learning a newer route or just coverage in general. If you have to get stuck splitting routes, you don't have to like the person, but you have to get along with them. That's my advice is you may not have to like them, but you kind of have to get along with them and try to keep the peace and work together. It is, as much as it's an independent job out on the road, it's a team effort in the office. So on that note, I'm going to wrap that up. And so we can all get off of here and enjoy the rest of our night. I want everybody to be safe. Tomorrow is Monday. And be safe out there and take it in stride. So on that note, we should be back next week and we'll talk to you then.
And as Bill says, make sure you make it home to your family.
Yes. You are the most important delivery. There we go.
Yeah.
Go fuck
Good night,
yourself.
everybody.